Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Cabinet meeting. First of all, fire evacuation procedures for evening meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm does sound, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear of this room. Please go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. A webcast is being made of this meeting, so please, everybody present, note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. If I could ask everybody to turn off their mobile phones or put them on silent. Thank you very much. I've just had reassurance that the webcast is live. One other piece of housekeeping, just an apology that there is an issue with the heating, which is why it won't get any hotter than 18 degrees. So I'm sure that prepares you for a cooler than we've experienced autumn night when we go outside of the room. So moving on to the business of the meeting. Can I ask if there are any apologies for absence? I think everybody is present. Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? No? Thank you very much. I have no urgent matters. We then look at the minutes of the meeting for the 6th of October. Is everybody happy that I sign them as a true and accurate record? Yes, thank you very much. Then we go to item 5, which is recommendations from the Economic Planning and Housing Committee, which are set out in front of us at pages 5 to 8. I don't have any public speakers, so I'm going to ask for the portfolio holder, Councillor Ganesh, to comment on the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. So the following EPH meeting held on the 1st of September 2020, the Cabinet is recommended to review the following sections of the water cycle study review presented to the committee and look into Commission piece of work for further study. So the delivery of water infrastructure is the responsibility of the water companies, the Environment Agency and Ofwat, the Water Service Regulation Authority. However, the draft local plan is submitted, the following may be considered. And I would like to thank parish councils, conservation groups, residents association and subject matter experts for closely working with EPH and making these recommendations. So if I could quickly go one by one. The recommendation 1, the work to reduce the total number of homes to be delivered on the basis of inadequate environmental capacity. So the report on this agenda outlines support for taking time at this stage to fully consider a suitable housing figure for the borough, which reflects local circumstances. In line with national guidance, the Council will need to consider further the exceptional circumstances in relation to the housing need figure, which justifies a different approach to the standard method. Once a housing need figure has been established, the Council will then consider whether this can be accommodated in the borough in light of constraints, including environmental capacity. So the recommendation number 2, rethink the spatial strategy to place less demand and impact on those areas most vulnerable to water supply and wastewater impacts. The local plan's spatial strategy will need to be reconsidered following the conclusion of the work on the housing requirement and will need to respond to the constraints identified where they are in line with national guidelines. This will be reported back to EPH committee for further discussions in following months. The recommendation number 3, undertake a competent scientific assessment of the impacts of proposed changes to wastewater treatment works, particularly around phosphate, before committing to development as recommended in water cycle study. Number 4, consider the environmental impact of utilising existing flow capacity at the older wastewater treatment works before the treatment is upgraded. Recommendation number 5, make a realistic assessment of the deliverability of the spatial strategy in terms of likely availability of infrastructure plan accordingly. So these 3, the recommendation in terms of further technical study or technical work and exploring the issues in more detail, officers will work with Whitchurch Conservation Group Environment Agency, Southern Water, to consider the matter more in detail. This will need to be considered through the local plan update process and will be reported back to EPH committee for further discussion. So it is important to note that the Environment Agency and water companies will only be able to fully engage in the process when there is an agreed draft spatial strategy for them to consider. So recommendation number 6, request high-level meeting with Environment Agency to better understand the strategy to protect the test and future of the Loddon. So we will be requesting a meeting for better understanding of Environment Agency's strategy, because we'll need to explore further whether there needs to be further high-level meetings to be held and who it will involve. So we will report back to EPH in due course. The recommendation number 7, to include a policy in the local plan to protect the tests from decline to the parallel to the one proposed for Loddon. I can confirm that the draft local plan update policy on river corridors covers both River Test, Loddon and Enbourne. The recommendation number 8, to facilitate the implementation of a strategic Grampian clauses to situations where the water companies have not agreed revised discharge standards with the EA and provided the appropriate treatment technology. This will be considered in reviewing the draft policies, and response will be provided back to EPH in following months. Recommendation number 9, lobby the government and Natural England to extend enhanced phosphate treatment to the tests, wastewater treatment works under the proposed LURB, the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill. So, we have, the letter has been sent to the Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities and Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, expressing our concerns as a local, as the council regarding discharge of wastewater treatment works. So the letter supports the recently announced proposed upgrades to wastewater treatment works required to help address nutrient neutrality, but has further requested that we would like wider consideration to be taken into account, such as the impact of nutrient pollution on other nature conservation sites such as SSIs and chalk streams that are affected by wastewater treatment discharges. The letter also expresses concerns that the water cycle study process and relevant national guidance does not go far enough to ensure solutions, with the required environmental controls and infrastructure updates being reliant on separate process by Environment Agency, water companies and offered the regulator. So the letter also seeks assurance that the wider consideration of nutrient pollution and wastewater treatment are taken into account through environmental controls, and that improvements to the monitoring and regulatory process to be to protect the quality of our water resources and nature conservation sites can be implemented in timely manner to ensure their protection. Moving on to recommendation 10. Would like to see SS4 of the policy strengthened. This can be considered in reviewing draft policies and response provided to EPH in due course. All the further information on what strengthening is being sought would be welcome. So I will be working with EPH members and MAP to explore more in detail. The recommendation, final recommendation 11, suggested that the Cabinet review the information provided by the water companies carefully and not rely on the promises and commitments made. So this has been noted as a portfolio holder and by the Cabinet. So tonight I would like to ask my Cabinet colleagues to note this recommendation. I will follow this up with EPH and work with the members in due course during this local plan update process. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Ganesh. Can I just ask and check in with my Cabinet whether we're happy to note the recommendations and thank Councillor Ganesh for his update as far as what he'll do with it? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Moving then on to item 6, which is the local plan update paper. I've got 5 speakers on this and 3 visiting councillors who wish to speak on it. And I'm going to take the visiting speakers first, acknowledging that you very kindly sent me the order that you'd rather speak in, which is always very helpful as far as a smoothly run meeting. So first of all, just to remind you that you have 2 minutes left and I know you are regular visitors, so you'll understand how the machinery works as far as lights and 2 minutes and the colour changing when you've got 30 seconds left. And I will remind you, you've got 30 seconds left. So first of all, if we could start with Gareth Kapner, please. Gareth, you know how it works. As soon as you start, I'll press the timer.
Good evening. As you know, I'm Gareth Kapner, Planning Advisor to Whitchurch Town Council and Whitchurch Conservation Group. We welcome the 4 recommendations before you tonight and ask that you accept them, but the 4th recommendation should include working proactively with communities as well as developers. We also welcome the contents of the main report, especially the recognition that the standard housing assessment method is based on out-of-date estimates at a time when the results of the 2021 census are beginning to become available. We also particularly welcome the rejection of the economically illiterate affordability ratio, which malignly inflates all figures by a third. The conclusion that new homes built in the borough are more expensive than existing homes, the well-known new homes premium, is a particularly relevant and acute observation. We have one comment and one major concern regarding section 9 of the report. The comment in paragraph 9.6 that the LPU inspector will send you back to the beginning is remote. Amendments will have been explored during the examination in public in the context of the new National Planning Policy Framework indicated in the Secretary of State's letter of July the 28th to the Chief Planning Inspector.
30 seconds
The
left.
publication of post-EIP modifications is an accepted part of the process. The major concern relates to paragraph 9.8, which suggests that new permissions may not count towards the LPU housing trajectory. This is not in accordance with the present LPU process, where, for instance, the 40 house over delivery in Whitchurch is offset against the proposed housing requirement. To do otherwise would be inconsistent and counterproductive, as it would provide a huge disincentive for local communities.
Can I just ask you to wrap up, please, Gareth?
So we do ask that you make a binding commitment to count the 5-year supply shortage sites against any future local plan housing requirement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could have Tracy Woodruff now, please. When you're ready, Tracy.
As you know, I'm Councillor Tracy Woodruff, Chairman of Whitchurch Town Council, its Development Committee and its Neighbourhood Plan Review Group. I'd like to pick up on the community reality of Mr Kapner's presentation. Whitchurch had the largest allocation of houses in the current local plan of any settlement outside Basingstoke, 350 dwellings following past high levels of growth. We delivered early on a made neighbourhood plan, and we have delivered or are delivering on all our sites to the extent that we are being credited with a 40 house over delivery in the spatial strategy. Our reconstituted neighbourhood plan group has been operating for 18 months, examining all the sites, constraints and issues around Whitchurch, advised by subject matter experts who I believe you respect. Our conclusion is that we are now running out of acceptable sites given our constraints, the most notable being the North Wessex Downs A and OB in its setting, the historic heritage town and its conservation area and many listed buildings, the River Test Triple SI and the need to protect the aquifer and its growing rural tourism offer. We are very relieved by the recommended rejection of out-of-date projections on the economically illiterate affordability ratio, which artificially increases every figure by a third. On this basis, and in accordance with the current spatial housing distribution, Whitchurch should be allocated up to 200 houses in the local plan update. The Made Whitchurch Neighbourhood Plan, endorsed at the local referendum, identified a site outside major constraints which can be extended. A proposal has already been the subject of pre-application consultation and engagement for a minimum of 200 dwellings. Should this come to an application, an important consideration will be unambiguous confirmation from you tonight that it will be counted against our LPU housing requirement in the same way our 40 house over delivery has already been counted. We were assured at a Teams meeting on July the 7th, 2021 with the local plans team at their invitation that this would be the case in the formulation of the local plan update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dave, you know how the system works as well, I'm sure. Perfect, when you're ready.
Thank you. Dear councillors, I think, frankly, the way the Water Framework Directive is really implemented is great. It merely documents the failure of the Environment Agency to protect our rivers and aquifers, with hundreds of delegations being the norm, including one proposed for our own River Loddon. Our Prime Minister Liz Truss promised during the hustings to protect our chalk streams and to hold the water companies to account for their damage to the environment. Following our presentation to the EPH on the 1st of September, we were therefore very pleased that the committee recommended the adoption of the way forward as set out in item 5 of the agenda. This could help achieve this goal. The way forward will help the spatial strategy to be decided on a firm scientific basis. It will provide an evidence base to ensure that the environmental impacts of the proposed developments to be quantified and identify those actions required to protect our environment. However, it will be in vain if the necessary infrastructure improvements are not delivered in time by the water companies. A consensus of independent reviews of the water cycle study casts serious doubts concerning the deliverability of the necessary infrastructure. We therefore strongly commend the inclusion of a risk assessment to better understand the consequences of such failure and to review the spatial strategy to reduce these impacts. We welcome the review of the current policy SS4, which was added to the list. We also
30 seconds.
We also suggest that the current draft of the revised local plan should be more widely assessed to establish how the policies can go to ensure the water companies deliver on their statutory duties. Basically, the policies need to be seen to put their constituents and the environment they live in ahead of the interests of the water companies. A task and finish group to tackle this specific issue may be a good way forward. We, in conclusion, commend the way forward to this Cabinet. We look forward to continue to support Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council in their efforts to protect our rivers and the unique environments, heritage and local economies they support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. If I can then ask for Jackie Brown. Welcome, Jackie, when you're ready in your own time.
Good evening, Jackie Brown, Whitchurch Conservation Group. Whitchurch supports moves to secure a reduction in the proposed housing numbers to a level that will preserve the unique historic characteristics of the borough's rural settlements and protect the borough's environmental assets. Policy EP4. The rural areas of the borough make a vital contribution to the wealth and well-being of the borough and seek to maintain and enhance prosperity of the rural economy. Whitchurch rural economy, tourism matters. Tourism is a key driver of growth and opportunity in rural market towns. UK tourism stats 2019. Domestic tourism is largely composed of urbanites travelling to rural and seaside destinations. The 25 billion they spend represents the single largest non-governmental transfer of wealth to the rural and seaside economies, creating 460,000 full-time jobs in these areas. Whitchurch has a growing tourism economy centred around our two unique heritage visitor attractions, our two key natural assets, the world-famous River Tesh chalk stream with its important trout and salmon fisheries, and as the southern gateway to the North Wessex Downs AOMB, with its hundreds of miles of countryside trails.
30 seconds.
Bombay Sapphire recently reported a 35% year-on-year increase in visitor numbers, with a target of around 80,000 a year. White Hart Inn reports accommodation figures are booming. They could do with another 5 or 6 rooms. And new countryside holiday lets have opened, responding to local demand. Whitchurch has reacted to government aims to get townies out walking in the countryside and recently hosted a Whitchurch place shaping What's Next meeting with South Western Railways to discuss recreational
Could I ask you to
travel
wrap up,
trends
please?
and opportunities for Whitchurch Station.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jackie. If I could then ask for Andy to come to the mic, please. In your own time, Andy.
Right, Andy Smith, Whitchurch Conservation Group, and I'm here to talk about the threats to our rural economy. Development in rural areas must be sensitive to location and surrounding environment. Policies EP4 and EM1. Development on a scale suggested by the new borough housing numbers threatens the borough's important rural heritage and countryside assets. Whilst Whitchurch can accept sensitive and proportionate levels of housing, massive urbanising development in protected landscapes bordering the town, promoted by offshore land speculators, Genco, apparently riding to the rescue of Whitchurch, would be destructive and unacceptable. You have heard Dave George, a hydrogeologist with specialist knowledge of chalk aquifers, present a clear explanation of the effect of and outcome of large-scale development on the catchment aquifer, fragile ecology of the River Test SSSI, and river/water-related industries. Locally, the following successful businesses/activities would be directly and negatively impacted. How does Basingstoke Council square that with the policy commitment to support healthy, prosperous rural economy? I mean, we have such assets as the Silk Mill, Heritage Mill Trail, Bombay Sapphire Gin Distillery.
30 seconds.
Important fisheries along the River Test chalk stream, known as the Jewel in the Crown, internationally renowned for its fly fishing and gin clear waters. Award-winning river distillery, River Test Distillery. Our gin is the spirit of the river. All the botanicals are sourced from SSSI riverbank meadows, plants that would be severely impacted by low water flow levels. Film and TV. Only last week, Paul Whitehouse was filming on the River Test and the North Wessex Downs rural accommodation, dark skies, walking and cycling. Contrary to what land speculators would have you believe, the Whitchurch rural economy is not in special measures, but we are, however, at a tipping point. The character and heritage of the town, the nationally protected landscapes, and the ecology of the headwaters are being threatened like never before.
Could you just wrap up for me, Andy, please?
Decisions taken by this council could permanently change, preserve the unique quality of our rural communities, and have a devastating effect on the rural tourism economy. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to put on record for all of our Whitchurch contributors that I think I personally have been amazed and impressed by your hard work, your expertise and your contribution, which I know will continue in this process when we go through something which is incredibly difficult for us all. And actually, I think all of the residents of the borough should be truly grateful for all of the hard work that you've done and what you've brought to our process so far. So a personal thank you from me on behalf of all of our residents, because it's been great. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming along again tonight. We'll now go to our visiting councillors. We've got Councillor Harvey, Councillor Rattigan and Councillor Frost, and I'm going to take Councillor Harvey first, if I may. Councillor Harvey, you know how it goes. You've got 4 minutes, and I'll give you a minute's warning towards the end.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. I think it's important that we recognise the Cabinet decision that's being taken this evening. This report comes in two parts. The first part is the decision on the local plan timetable, which is welcome and reflects what many of us from across different groups on this council have been saying for a long time now. The second part is what some have dubbed Project Fear. It's taken us 2 years and an awful lot of pain to get here. And where is here? We began this process with the then council leader Clive Sanders telling us that he would like to see a light touch local plan review. When he was questioned, he was absolutely clear that it would be a light touch. This has been anything but light touch. I don't call a complete overhaul of policies and a plan for 18,000 houses light touch. So we were misled from the beginning. 2 Tory leaders later, and a push from the capital of the South that is still on the agenda, because nothing has actually changed since Councillor Rattigan gave us his vision for the borough, other than the Chancellor saying on Friday he wanted to do away with planning regulations. The trajectory of the local plan remains today as it was over 18 months ago. It's adrift. It's what this Cabinet now does in this period of pause that matters most. All eyes are on you. We should be very clear. You are the one constant throughout all of this, Councillor Bound. You were there in Councillor Sanders' Cabinet and in Councillor Rattigan's, and in fact you've been in the Cabinet through successive Conservative administrations in this council when each major decision on planning policy was made by all of these Conservative administrations. And let's be clear, the Conservative government and the Conservative council are the reason why our borough is now an open target for speculative developers. Every major site that developers now try to ram through lies at the Conservatives' door. It is this Conservatives administration's failure on many down, 25 years on and not one house built, that is the root cause of why there is no 5-year housing land supply and why how little has been done to tackle it. It's the lack of investment in infrastructure that was promised in the last local plan you presided over as the reason why sites like the golf course are now at a standstill. The lack of a 5-year housing land supply is this administration's responsibility. Too many Conservative games over many down are now coming back to haunt our borough. And I still wait to hear what the government have got to say. Any announcement on the future of planning. We've had a summer of navel-gazing, rumour and promises. A summer where our MP is now running a petition calling on this council to lower its housing numbers, when in fact her fire should be directed at her own government and its planning laws. They're nearly as immoral as their tax policy. It's Ranald Janina's responsibility and Kit Malthouse's, who now have the power as Secretaries of State. Make no mistake, the government's standard method for calculating housing targets based on 13-year-old data
You have 1 minute.
to blame. And on Friday, the Chancellor's mixed messages on planning reform do not help us. So what will you do now to stop big developers from simply abusing local democracy and ride roughshod over our communities? Simply talking about Project Fear in a report isn't going to help our borough. A local plan on its own is no guarantee of a 5-year housing land supply, because we assume when we say about sites that they will come forward in the order in which we wish them to. They never do. East of Basingstoke, many down on the golf course are all significant, and they aren't helping our 5-year land supply right now. This is on your watch. So how will you defend the borough from speculative development? It's about what actions you now plan to take. So as I say, everybody's watching. People in our communities across the borough are watching you for what you will do. We cannot afford to have our environment irrevocably damaged. We want truly affordable homes that local people can actually afford. We want development that puts
Allow us to wrap
infrastructure
up,
first.
please, Councillor Harvey.
So the question comes back, with all of the desire that we have for a local plan that will work, what will you do as a Cabinet in this period of pause, and how will you deliver the protection we need from speculative developers who will ride roughshod over our 5-year housing land supply? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for your contribution, Councillor Harvey, as always. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair, Council Leader. I had hoped for so much more than 13 pages, if I'm particularly honest. It is thin gruel. I had held out the hope that you understood the gravity of the issues in this paper and not a balloon without air in it, let down again. It is tired, moribund, it abdicates responsibility, It threatens communities, does nothing to protect our environment, and may well bring forward greater numbers of homes at a time of other people's choosing, not ours, while leaving this borough open to speculators, charlatans, profit-focused developers, while endorsing planning by appeal. This paper is a huge slap in the face to our officers who have spent hundreds of hours in an effort to site select and to provide us with an updated local plan. It is honestly awful that we are waking up to policies that do not and cannot protect this borough. The points made by Whitchurch are very real. We don't have the policies to make a difference. We need greener homes for our people, safer homes. But of course, we can't bring them when we don't have a local plan to deliver them. How fleet of foot, but how deceptive of all of you to have written this paper. The words aren't there, but we all know what they mean. This is stopped, delayed, paused. You need to tell our residents honestly what it's going to mean for them. Are you saying it's going to be all right to wait for the government to change the number? This government is holding on by the skin of its teeth, looking at the economic problems we've got. And yet, do you think it's going to run to our aid in Basingstoke and Dean? I don't think so. For those of you who hold out hopes to one day be an MP among our cabinet, the non-decision written into this paper indicates to me and to many others that you'll be ideally suited to become backbench non-entities in the House of Commons. You were elected to make decisions. If you cannot stomach that responsibility, then resign and leave this council. If you really cared about the residents, then you would be front and centre in this paper and not let the word MP appear just as often as the word resident. That is not what your responsibility is. It is to protect residents across the borough, not just for one MP. This paper is full of warnings. And if you delay and suspend a local plan update, all you are doing is kicking this ball into the long grass. How many of you...
1 minute, Councillor Rattigan.
How many of you have spoken to people on our housing list? So are you going to speak to the 50% or more that are not going to get a home, who are going to have to live with unscrupulous landlords, charging whatever they want? Are you going to tell families that they have to continue to live in cramped environments or sofa surf because you are not going to deliver the homes that they deserve? You need to get ambition. And yes, the elephant in this room is Manny Down, as Councillor Harvey has rightly pointed out. I've managed to pull out figures and papers that say in 2018, Councillor Isaac, we remain on track to build the first new homes on Manny Down in 2019. That is failure on an abject scale, and it means that places like Kingsclere and Whitchurch are likely to get development that they do not want.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan, for your contribution. Councillor Frost.
Thank you very much. I appreciate I've got 4 minutes. I won't take that time up because obviously I'm very interested to hear what the Cabinet has to say in debate. For people that aren't aware, I'm chair of EPH. I also sit on DC, but I'm here tonight as a ward councillor. Okay, it was we had a Kingsclere Parish Council meeting last night, and it was with a sad and heavy heart, okay, that I gave a report on what's happening at EPH. As far as I'm concerned, I somehow think we have dropped the ball. I don't like it when I'm hearing words like pause or, you know, a stop, okay, or we're taking a time out, okay. We've been working too long and too hard for that, okay, to actually do that, okay. I'm not very happy that in your paper, okay, there's an adoption in 2025 now, okay, on the timetable. So we are at significant risk of speculative development. in Kingsclear, okay, my ward, I have an application that's currently in for Porch Farm, okay, where there's potentially 200 houses there. There is another speculative development on what's called Yew Tree Farm on the other side of the village, which is another 200 houses. We are scheduled under the current update with the current housing number to have 195 houses over the whole plan period, okay, and yet somehow 400 houses are looking like coming down the road, okay, for Kingsclear. Borghurst, another parish council in my ward, they've been subject to speculative development over the last 3 months. Okay, not very large sites, 10, 12, okay, 6 houses here, there and everywhere, but it's still speculative development that really needs to be taken care of, in local plan. And as our current local plan policies that fall away because the policies are outdated, we have nothing yet, okay, to actually replace them with, because the current planned policies, okay, haven't gone through Reg 18, so they have no power attached to them, which, as a member of DC is mind-blowing, okay, because it just leaves us so totally open to planning by the inspectorate, by appeal. Tadley, okay, luckily Tadley is subject to the exclusion zone, okay, with the Office of Nuclear Responsibility, and also the plan by West Berkshire for evacuating people should there be any issues. But again, we have lots of infill, we have lots of speculative development that are coming through in 1s and 2s and maybe up to 6s. Okay, we need the local plan, okay, to go forward. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say, councillors, is that, everyone's looking at you. Okay, we want to know what's going to happen, okay, and what the Cabinet are going to do to show some leadership in not allowing the local plan to be paused, stopped, okay, or come to a standstill. We need the local plan. We need it to come forward as soon as we possibly can. We need to be right, okay, but we need to come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frost. So I'm going to hand over for the portfolio holder to talk to the paper in front of us, and then I may pass some comments.
Thank you, Leader. I would like to start with thanking all the speakers this evening. Thanks for all the contribution from conservation groups, town councils, parish councils and sitting councillors. And the paper in front of us is to consider the way forward in the development of the local plan updates. The council has been working towards updating its local plan to ensure a plan-led approach to growth and change in the borough, which meets the need of our residents and visitors in a way that responds to the climate change agenda, ensures that communities are sustainable and that our environment is protected and enhanced, supporting the ecological emergency declaration. So whilst we've been working proactively to move forward with the development of the plan, there are significant and sustained concerns held by the range of stakeholders about the level of future growth in the area and the use of the standard method to identify the borough's housing need. So it is important to keep the plan process going, but in a way that responds to local concerns and local circumstances, as well as national policy and guidance. So at this current time, it has become clear that it would not be appropriate to undertake a consultation on a draft plan at this stage, while such significant concerns around the housing numbers remain the same. So therefore, as Cabinet member responsible for a local plan process, I recommend the following. 1. That take appropriate steps to communicate with the new Secretary of State to advocate a move away from the standard method for calculating housing needs. The number 2, continues to carry out work to identify whether there is a sound alternative to the standard method and work to establish whether the housing requirement should be less than the housing need figure based on constraints within the borough. And the advance of the consultation of draft plan, also known as Regulation 18. The number 3, notes the update to the timetable of the local plan update and resulting updates to the local development scheme known as LDS. And number 4, endorses taking a positive approach to development proposals which contribute to delivering the well-being of the area and meet policy objectives, working with developers through the planning system to deliver suitable and sustainable schemes and work towards a 5-year housing land supply. So the paper in front of us provides us the detailed background on necessity for these recommendations and approach on exploring additional work where necessary. The paper also highlights the impact on local plan timetable and housing land supply position. The Council is committed to ensuring that an up-to-date plan is put in place to guide change and ensure future needs are met in the most sustainable way. However, the plan needs to be respond to local circumstances and concerns and reflect the specific issues faced by the borough and highlighted by a number of the speakers today and throughout this process and through various consultation or the committees. So sustained concerns over continuing high house building have been expressed and full consideration need to be given to whether there are exceptional circumstances that would justify any alternative assessment of housing need to the standard method required under national policy and whether there are constraints that would justify not meeting local housing needs in full in the local plan update. So it is considered that this work should be completed prior to any consultation on a draft plan. With so much uncertainty at the national level, the Council needs to ensure it's doing all it can to develop the right plan for the borough. So tonight, I would like to ask my Cabinet colleagues to approve these recommendations and allow to ensure Council to do all it can to develop a right plan, a more suitable plan, consider all the concerns raised by the stakeholders during this process. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Ganesh. Any comments or questions from my Cabinet colleagues before I ask Councillor Isaac? If you feel the need to respond, I'm certainly going to pass on comments in a moment.
Good. Okay. Well, firstly, I echo what you said to the representatives of the Whitchurch community. Thank you very much for all the commitment that you have and the hard work that you've put into this very complicated planning system that we have to deal with. I think it demonstrates the strength of feeling in your community and other communities around the borough. You're not saying that you're against the adverse consequences of the standard methodology, and I think that what we're again proposing to do tonight is perfectly consistent with that. Under the new local plan proposals, we are looking at having a wider diversity of sites to bring forward, so we're not just dependent on a few large sites to deliver our housing numbers. But the other thing that we must recognise is the straitjacket of the system that is imposed upon us by government. It's top down. We're a standard methodology is imposing housing numbers on us, and we have a system that has the perverse affordability ratio, which means that the more we build, the more we have to build in future. So I'm saying very clearly tonight that we want to send a message out to government that this system is not working. It's not one that has credibility, and we are looking for government to change it. And that I hope is a clear message that the government will receive tonight from us.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Is there anybody else who wants to comment? Councillor Vox.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, yes, I mean, I agree. I think what we're trying to do here is to respond in a constructive way to the rejection of building lots and lots of, and I think it's a really difficult dilemma, and that land supply is an added dimension which makes it even more complicated and difficult for our communities. So for me, the land supply is in many ways more of a challenge than the housing numbers developments. And I think across our borough, you know, it has undermined a lot of things like our neighbourhood plans, and you know how our parish councils and our communities have done their best to engage with us and to explain where there are sustainability pressures, where there are water pressures, whatever they are. There's loads and loads of them, all genuine and all things we should listen to. So this is a very difficult subject. I think we're trying to negotiate it the best we can. I think this is the best compromise. You know, we have to agree it, get on with it, and make it happen, and do what's right for our borough. The only area that I would like the portfolio holder to pick up and work with is the fourth recommendation, which is about endorsing a positive approach to development proposals which contribute to delivering the well-being of the area and meet policy objectives, working with developers through the planning system to deliver suitable and sustainable schemes. And I think there, for me, to be genuinely looking at the well-being of the area and the sustainability of schemes, we do need to engage properly and effectively with our communities, with our parish councils, with the people on the ground who have genuine information to contribute to these developments. So that's my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vox. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Leader. I want to thank the portfolio holder for bringing this report forwards. I think it's a moment of recognising some of the concerns that have been raised by councillors and residents alike. We do face a very difficult and challenging local plan system that does push forward a higher housing number than any of us would prefer. And so this moment where we can reflect on the number, reflect on the views raised by local residents about that number, and begin a programme of work to seek a sound local plan with a lower housing number at the front is very much a priority. I do recognise very much the concerns that have been raised about speculative development. I know that's a concern very much of my residents in Evingar, particularly at Washwater and Edgenswell and Bishop's Green, and I do echo the concerns about some of the Genco proposals immediately north of the land of the railway line. That's a concern of my parishes in Hurstbourne Priors and St Marybourne as well. So we are very aware of the issues that are currently being faced on speculative development, and that is why there is a determination to bring forward a local plan that is sound, that will enhance and establish the policies we need to protect our residents. But we are also taking note of the very considerable concern that's been raised, and that's why we're bringing forward this programme.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Just some comments before I put it to the vote from me. I would absolutely agree with Councillor Vox regarding the 5-year land supply is not fit for purpose and demonstrates how broken the system is. There was a word that was mentioned to me tonight, which was the word constant. I'm acutely aware that I've been the leader of this council for 6 months, and there's one thing that has constantly been said to me, which is, Simon, do everything that you can to reduce the big number by thousands, which is what this activity tonight does. Mixed in with those comments from residents has been criticism from some of the actions of this council about supporting burgeoning growth in the past. And unusually, we have the presence of 2 of our previous council leaders in the room. Sadly, these are 2 leaders who presided over some of the largest growth that this council has ever seen, and articulated that they welcome more growth. So I listen to that constant voice that I have heard from residents, which is why I thank so heartedly the people of Whitchurch that have come to speak to us tonight, who said, Simon, the one thing that you can do for us as leader is to reduce the big number. It, of course, doesn't answer all the questions about sites. It doesn't, of course, answer all the questions and all of the threats that we have from speculative development and the desire that so many of our residents, our parish councils, our communities and our councillors have regarding up-to-date policies that enable Development Control Committee to do everything that they are desperate to do. But I am not going to be like previous leaders and preside over burgeoning growth. That is not why I stood to be council leader. So I am very pleased to put this paper to my cabinet colleagues so that we can preside over slowing down the growth and truly doing what our residents overwhelmingly and consistently have said to me in the last 6 months. So can I ask Cabinet whether I have your support for the recommendations as they're laid out in the paper and as they were laid out by Councillor Ganesh? Yes? Lovely. Thank you very much. So, as far as the rest of the meeting, we don't have any confidential items that would require exemption. So what I would like to do is bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.